Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Sean Studer, and this is the Happy Trails series where we're going to interview spiritual teachers. And today we have two of my favorite teachers. They're teachers of A Course in Miracles. And it was we have Gary Renard and his wife, Cindy Renard. And it was Gary's book, The Disappearance of the Universe, that got me started in A Course in Miracles myself. And both of them are authors now. Gary wrote The Disappearance of the Universe, followed up by Your Immortal Reality, and followed that one up by Love Has Forgotten No One, and then his latest book, The Lifetimes When Jesus and Buddha Knew Each Other. And this is a fascinating book. And now Cindy just came out with her book. It's called A Course in Health and Well-Being. So these are fantastic books, so I highly recommend that you get those and read them. And so today we're going to talk about, we just got through the workshop. It's called Living Above the Battleground. And we're here in Rancho Santa Fe, California, in San Diego area. And they were kind enough to let me do a little interview afterwards. And so I have a couple of important topics I want to talk about that I think would be very helpful to course students. The first one, let's talk about a subject that's really in our face right now, not only in this country, but actually worldwide. And that is politics. So how can we use politics to awaken? How can we use politics to overcome these upsets that we have around politics? What can you give us that can be helpful?
Wow. Well, politics is a really difficult subject, especially for me because I was almost brought up on politics. When I was 9 years old, John F. Kennedy was running for president, and he's from my state, Massachusetts, and he was kind of like a hero of mine. And so I really followed him. I really started following politics. I was devastated when he was assassinated, 3 years later. And politics is very hard because we've been kind of like set up. We've been set up by the ego. The ego loves the idea of separation, loves the idea of pitting one group of people against another group of people, which reinforces separation. And it's very difficult to stop yourself from reacting when it comes to politics. And yet that's exactly what you have to do. And it goes against the grain of what we're used to. We're used to reacting, arguing, judging, being right about our position when it comes to politics. And it seems that today it's become more and more difficult because of the polarization that has gone on. It's almost like America is divided in half.
It's gotten more so, it seems like.
Yeah, and I remember even as recently as the 1970s, and to a certain extent the early 80s, there was such a thing as a moderate. You had these politicians who were moderates, who could compromise, who could bring people together, and that seems to have disappeared. It seems like it's just us or them.
And the moderates are actually looked down upon.
True.
Nowadays.
Yeah, they are. They're attacked, and it's like what we need to do, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't vote or exercise their political rights if they want to, but at the same time, we need to forgive. And it's not easy to forgive when you're reacting. So the first thing you have to do is stop yourself from reacting. When that politician comes on the TV screen who you can't stand and you want to go, that's your opportunity right there to stop yourself, because that's the ego. The ego wants you to react, and judgment makes it real and keeps the whole thing real in your mind, which will just keep you activated forever, keep you reacting forever. And what you need to do in the first step is stop yourself. Notice that that's the ego. There should be a little red flag going off that says ego alert, because you're starting to feel uncomfortable. You're starting to feel not peaceful, not relaxed, agitated.
Upset.
Upset, a little anxious. Any of those negative emotions, that's the ego. You have to notice it and stop yourself. That's the first step in forgiveness. Now, that's not easy for me. And by the way, it doesn't really matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. It's the same dynamic. Right. I happen to be a Democrat, so Donald Trump comes on the TV, and I want to go, that son of a bitch. And the only problem with that is because of the way the mind works, because there's really only one of us, at the level of the unconscious mind, your unconscious mind will kind of like interpret anything that you think about somebody else to really be about you.
Right.
So if I'm sitting there thinking that, Donald Trump is a son of a bitch, all that I'm really doing is calling myself that. And it will determine how I feel about myself and also ultimately what I believe I am. This is why it's so important to practice forgiveness. It's not for the other person. It's not for the person who it looks like you're forgiving.
Or what they're doing.
Right. It's really for you. You're the one who's going to get the results of it. You're the one who's going to get the results of your judgment, or you're the one who's going to get the results of your forgiveness. It's just going to you. So if you can stop yourself from reacting and notice that that's the ego, then you can stop thinking with the ego and you can start thinking with the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is going to say, look, first of all, what you're seeing isn't true. It's an illusion. It's a dream. You're reacting to something that isn't really there. And what you want to do is forgive, because that forgiveness is just going to you, and you're the one who's going to feel better. You're the one who's going to be happier, healthier, more peaceful. All kinds of things can come as a result of that. You can think more clearly. You can be inspired. All kinds of good things can come as a result of practicing forgiveness. So what you do is you forgive the person, including that politician on the TV screen, not because he's really done something.
Mm-hmm.
You forgive him because he hasn't really done anything, because you're the one who made them up in the first place, because this is your dream. The dream is not being dreamed by somebody else. You're the one who is having this dream. So you're going to forgive that person because they haven't really done anything. And what that does is it undoes it in your mind. A Course in Miracles, which we believe in, says that salvation is undoing. If you forgive them because they really did it, then that continues to make it real in your mind and does not undo the ego. But if you forgive them because they haven't really done anything, because this is just a meaningless dream, and there's a reality that is just beyond the veil, which we'll get to in a moment, then that's the kind of forgiveness that actually undoes the ego. So now you're saying, okay, I'm forgiving them because they haven't really done anything. Then you can take the third step in forgiveness, and that step is what my teachers would call spiritual sight. It's what A Course in Miracles calls vision. And you can think of that person not as being a separate being. You can think of that person as not being a person. You can think of them as being this perfect spirit, which is what they really are, which is not a partial attribute. What they really are is all of it, not part of it. They are all of it. They are nothing less than God. So you have to kind of like think outside the box. You have to think of them as being this incredible immortal being that can't even be contained by the universe of time and space.
Or a political party.
No, that's right. Something that is immortal, invulnerable. Something beyond the universe of time and space. And the way that the mind works, as the Course teaches, as you see him, you will see yourself, because of what we said earlier about the way the unconscious mind is going to interpret this. If you think about them that way, this unlimited way of being perfect spirit, totally innocent, something that has never really left heaven, because there's no such thing as separation. So that's why they're innocent, because nothing has happened, and they are still at home. As the Course says, you are at home in God, dreaming of exile,
right,
but perfectly capable of awakening to reality. If you think of them as this perfect being, this perfect oneness, that is how you will come to experience yourself. That's how Jesus got in touch with his divinity 2,000 years ago, was by seeing it everywhere without exception. But you can't make any exceptions, or else it's not whole. It's not perfect oneness, and it won't work. So it has to apply equally to everybody. But if you can do it, then you yourself will start to get in touch with your divinity.
Nice. So if we're upset at a politician, then we're looking at on a screen, another screen. It's really because our judgments about them is we're projecting on them because we don't want to look at it. It's really about ourselves. So whatever we think of them, we want to accuse them of the thing that we feel about ourselves, but aren't willing to take responsibility for and look at.
Yeah.
The Course would call that our secret sins and hidden hate we're projecting out.
Right.
And the ego wants to see these things in other people because it feels like it's getting rid of something.
Yeah.
And like but the guilt is still there in the mind. It doesn't go anywhere when we project, although it feels like it does. And you might feel a temporary sense of peace because you're projecting the
You're
guilt.
blaming.
You're blaming.
It's their fault.
Right, it's their fault. What happens is because there's only one of us, one mind, what happens, it just comes right back to you, right back to the person that is judging
Right.
and projecting. It just comes right back and says, well, I must have judged first in my own mind. That's what the Course is teaching us. Whenever we project or judge someone else, it's saying that I, first of all, believe that I'm right and that my perception is accurate. And I'm the one giving this person all the meaning, and I'm placing the interpretation on this person of what I think it means and what his role or her role should be to me. But when we do that, we're falsely perceiving everyone in the world. We don't really understand what we're seeing. We can't see the bigger picture, in other words. And I think the whole political situation is just one example of thousands of different forms separation takes. It's not just politics, but so the Course in Miracles is teaching us to generalize our lessons and see it all as the same.
So not make politics special.
Right.
Because it's not.
It's not.
Right.
It's not different than anything else. So in other words, your mind is either at peace or it's not.
That's true.
And the ego loves, though, to single out certain people and say, oh, you're the cause.
Right.
That's why I feel bad because it's something you did or something you said.
Right. And I am right because you're wrong.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Gary covered forgiveness very well. Anything that disturbs our peace is always to be used for forgiveness, true forgiveness.
So that our political situation is actually our best opportunity to practice forgiveness. Then.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's, and it makes sense because if I'm upset about a politician that's coming on because of what I think they are saying or lying or whatever, it's like I have to look at myself like, what is it about myself that I'm projecting on him and accusing him of? Because I'm not willing to look at it myself. Because I'm allowing an image on a screen to get me upset.
Right. Giving power to the image, to make you upset. And that's why I love the Course, because it says, hey, all power is of the mind, and all cause is in the mind, not out in the world. And so when we appear to project our own unconscious guilt onto other people, like I said, it temporarily may feel good, but eventually you're going to experience the effects of that because it's coming right back to you.
Yeah.
Because there's only one mind.
Well, and this is a good lead-in into the second part of what I want to discuss, and that is the decision-making power of our mind that you've touched on in your books and your lectures, and both of you actually in your book too, because that's one thing that is kind of finally getting through to me, and I know there's a lot of other Course students out there that may not understand the real power of the decision-making part of our mind. So let's first talk about that, what Kim describes as 3 parts of a split mind, and how can we use that decision-making part of our mind and what for?
Yeah, well, the mind, first of all, from the perspective of reality, total oneness, the mind isn't split at all. It's perfect oneness. So what appeared to happen is the mind appeared to split over having bought into the idea we were separate from God. So that created now an apparent 2 choices. We have 2 now seeming choices to choose from. The separation idea, which the Course calls the ego, or we have the Holy Spirit's interpretation, which is the correction for the separation, that says nothing really happened. You didn't separate from God. And you're still innocent and home in God. And those are the 2 choices we're always choosing from. But who's doing the choosing?
Who's doing the choosing, right?
That's what the Course would call the decision maker, the part of the mind that chooses between the 2. And whichever one it chooses is what it thinks it is or what it believes is real. And what it's identifying with. So let's say we choose the ego, which means we're choosing the separation from God. Our experience is going to reflect that choice. So we're going to feel separate. We're going to feel lack. We're going to feel alone. We're going to feel maybe depressed, anxious, sad, deprived. That's all comes from the thought of separation. And rightfully so, because we're appeared to have separated from the very creator that created us out of pure love. And when we appear to be apart from that, we're going to feel the effects of that. But there's another choice. And to get in touch with the mind is to get in touch with the decision maker that says, I can choose another way of looking at this now. I have another choice. That would be the Holy Spirit's interpretation now for what it is I'm experiencing, what it is I'm seeing. And that would be, I'm still at home in God. Nothing really happened. I'm still, and I only believed that I was guilty. Separation is only a belief, not a fact. And the Holy Spirit would only see you are as you are in truth. And it wouldn't, there's no exceptions to that. It would only see love. It would only see pureness and wholeness and innocence. Those are the two choices we have.
So how do we get in touch with that decision maker? That's probably the biggest question I think a lot of course students would have, or misunderstanding, or lack of even being aware of.
Yeah. We have to actively be aware, which we can train the mind. First of all, it comes with undoing the ego through the practice of true forgiveness, but reminding your mind that you are a mind and not a body. And your mind is where you are choosing. You're not even really choosing at this level. So you activate the mind's power to choose by first being aware you have a choice. You're aware of these two thought systems, and only one of those thought systems is real. And so you exercise that power by actively choosing it, by deciding to say, you know what? I must have been looking at this with the ego if I feel bad, but you're aware that you have another way of looking at it. You choose it. You have to literally be actively aware that you have a mind and you're not a body. And you have to have willingness to go there, willingness to see something another way. That's a big part of this. If there's no willingness, you're going to appear to be stuck in only one choice. And that's going to be the ego's view or interpretation of what it is you're going through.
Yeah, the Course teaches that the power of decision is your one remaining power as a prisoner of this world. You can decide to see it right. You can decide to see what you're watching with the Holy Spirit or the ego. Those are really the only two choices, because they represent two complete and mutually exclusive thought systems. You can't blend them together. You have to choose one or the other, and that's where your power is in that choice. So the Course teaches that you activate spirit in your mind by choosing it. It says, the mind is the activating agent of spirit. So you choose spirit, that activates it in your own mind. So what you choose is very important. The power of choice, the power of the mind, the power of belief. These things are staggering. And if you choose to see a person as a separate, guilty body, then that is what you are determining that you are. But if you choose to see them as an innocent, immortal being in perfect oneness with God, then that is what you will eventually experience. The thoughts come first, and the experience follows. That's why it's so important, even in politics, where it's so natural to want to be right. A Course in Miracles asks you, do you prefer that you be right or happy?
Right, that's true.
And once again, that doesn't mean you can't vote against the other person or whatever. It's just that you're not attacking anymore in your mind.
Or depending on them for your happiness.
Right. If you're depending on them or the world for your happiness, you're in trouble, because the only thing the world is going to do is change.
Yeah,
it's a world of shift and change. But if your happiness and your peace of mind is not dependent on what happens in the world, then that would be real power. That would be real spirituality, because now, you're not dependent on somebody's whims or the capriciousness of the ego.
Right.
Another way of activating the choice, you were talking about the decision maker, is it can be very helpful to pay attention to how you feel and your mood, because your mood tells you which teacher you've chosen.
That's a great point. I think that's a great point.
And if you're feeling bad or you're feeling sad or depressed, you must have chosen the ego. Or you wouldn't feel that way. You chose wrongly, with the wrong mind.
And if you catch yourself doing that, what would you do next?
What would you do? Then you go, oh, well, there's another way to look at this. What's the other choice?
So you have to detach yourself from the choice you made or the attachment you have to that.
And have the willingness
And then
look
choose
to
again.
see another way to choose again.
Okay.
So your feelings are important in that sense. It will
That's a
tell
good point,
you
right? To
what
pay
you've
attention
chosen.
to.
And then you know, oh, well, I must have chosen that, so I can choose again. I can choose another way of looking at this. Really
So our feelings are
interesting.
telling us this is what it feels like to make that choice. Basically,
Yes.
kind of like
We're
on that level.
experiencing
Right,
the
on that
feeling from thought. We have a thought, maybe of the ego, and then we experience that thought through feelings. Through feeling bad, deprived, lack, any form the fear takes. That's our cue. And Jesus says in the Course, your mood will tell you when you have decided wrongly.
Right.
Your mood
So
will
we don't
tell
want
you.
to make the mistake of thinking our feelings are a cause, which I think there are
Right.
some people
It's not
who do make a
cause.
mistake.
That's right. It's an
You just-
effective thought.
Right.
What you're
In fact,
choosing.
your feelings are a result of the thoughts that you have been having for a long period of time.
Right.
It's always the thoughts that come first. People assume that they're having these negative thoughts because of the way that they feel. It's
Right.
actually the other way
Right.
around.
Right.
They're having the feelings that they're having because of the thoughts that they had before that.
And those mostly in unconscious thoughts that we've been hanging on to, and old beliefs. That-
It's both. It's the negative reactions that they've been having about the world, about people, the things that they've been saying habitually in their minds for years.
Right.
Feelings result as a matter of thinking that can take place over years,
True.
and eventually, people can become so resentful of other people that they kill them. So it builds up for a long period
Right.
of time sometimes.
So the way to heal that, we still have to go back to the mind, right? And look at the thoughts behind that and the beliefs
Yes.
we've been hanging on to.
Yes.
And our feeling nature is there it can be like a tool
Yes.
if we use our right mind.
It's a tool. It's not.
Right.
It's not negative. It's
Right.
just a tool to gauge, like a gauge that says, "How have I been thinking about things?"
Yeah, right. So it's not who we are.
No.
It's just it's like a tool that we can use. It's available to us to use if we're choosing to use our right mind.
Yes.
Look at it what the Holy Spirit said, the ego, which is going to
Yes.
have us say, well, this is the way you feel. That's because you're
Yeah.
guilty.
That's right.
Right.
And let's remind people what the Holy Spirit really is the answer to the separation.
Mm-hmm.
It's the atonement principle that says we're still innocent and nothing happened. We're still
Right.
at home in God, and that's
Right.
what we're choosing when we're choosing the Holy Spirit, remembering our innocence.
And the more we choose that, the more we'll feel that connection to that peace.
Oh yeah, it
that
becomes your
innocence.
experience over time.
Yeah.
It's a process, of undoing. It doesn't always happen overnight. It's a process for
And that's-
everybody.
And that's
But-
important. I mean, that's
Yeah.
important to remember and
Yeah.
just to relax and hey, this is a process. We didn't develop this overnight. We didn't come to these, negative thoughts and guilt overnight or over one lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a process. But, from what I understand, the more we're willing to choose, the Holy Spirit and the right mind and get back to the mind and look at it from that point of view, the quicker we can undo it as opposed to
Yes.
the lifetimes of doing it.
Yes. In other words, you don't have to suffer. Suffering
Right.
becomes less and less and less.
Right.
When the ego is undone, you suffer less.
That's
Delay
awesome.
of joy is needless. We don't have to delay our joy.
Right.
We can actively choose.
Yeah, and you'll notice that no matter what is discussed in my books between me and my teachers, sooner or later, they always bring the subject back around to forgiveness.
Yeah,
Because that's what it's all about.
it really is.
And forgiveness is done at the level of the mind.
Right.
And mind is cause. What we're looking at is just an effect. So now we're going to the cause and we're changing our mind about what we're seeing, and we're kind of like taking on the Holy Spirit's interpretation. It's like you're watching a movie
Mm-hmm.
and you got the ego sitting on one side of you.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of judgment, you got the Holy Spirit sitting on the other side of you. And it's the same movie. It still looks the same. But
Right.
the question is, which interpretation of the movie are you going to listen to? And whichever one you listen to will determine your experience of it.
True.
So do you want to have the Holy Spirit's experience of the movie, or do you want to have the ego's experience
Right.
of the movie? One leads to peace, the other leads to continuous conflict.
Mm-hmm. You know, it reminds me, you remember the commercials and the TV shows and movies when we were growing up where you'd have an angel on one shoulder and devil on the other?
Yeah.
Who are they talking to? The decision maker. They would choose
Yeah.
it because they're both
Yeah.
trying to convince the decision maker to choose it.
Yes, yes,
You know?
yeah.
That's the way it is.
Yeah, I know it's fascinating. And one of the can be really helpful for course students that, is come back to chapter 15, the holy instant. And there's a beautiful line in there that says, would you be hostage to the ego or host to God? And that's
I
that
love that.
choice that we have. Another way, and it's said so many different ways in the course, that same thing.
Oh yeah.
This is what you're choosing. Either, and we'll know we're hostage to the ego if we're upset,
Upset.
angry, scared, whatever. We're hostage. We're in jail
Yes.
and hell.
Yes.
Whereas host to God is more of that peaceful, freeing feeling.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that becomes eventually you start to question, what do I really want? What do I really want to feel? Suffering is needless. Do I want to continue to perpetuate this suffering and sense of lack,
Yeah.
sense of separation? You have to sort of question in your mind what it is that's really going on. And that questioning process can also help you to have the willingness to change your mind. When you just question and you start looking at how you've been feeling,
Yeah.
and there must be a cause for this,
Right.
why I'm feeling this way, if I'm feeling bad, and there is.
Right.
Let me go back into my mind and let me look at the
Right.
thoughts I've been thinking. And there's always a direct connection. There's always an association between the thoughts we think and then how we feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens then? We act it out. Then the behavior is the acting out part.
The effect of it, right?
That's the effect, yes.
Right.
The behavior is the effect. But it always starts with a thought.
It does. It does.
Always
So
starts
we're not the
with that.
victim of our feelings unless
We're
we
not-
choose to
unless
be.
we choose it.
Right. That's a great point.
Right.
Well, I think we're out of time here, and this has been a fascinating discussion. There is so much we could talk about.
Yeah.
Just even on just that chapter 15, the holy instant, because there's
Oh,
so
gosh.
much beautiful content there. I'm speaking, for me personally, because it's having a big impact on my life right now. So anyway, so thank you for watching this, and you can visit your websites, right? Is it
Yeah. GaryRenard.com.
GaryRenard.com?
And CindyLaura.com.
And mine is TheHappyTrails.guru. So, we hope y'all will visit the websites and, just keep practicing with the course. That's the biggest thing. Just keep practicing. Don't give up. And you will see the results. These two are living demonstrations of it. So thank you for watching, and y'all be good to each other.